This morning, Joe Biden finally addressed the accusations made against him by Tara Reade, saying they did not happen. But in an interview with Mika Brzezinski of MSNBC, he struggled to keep his argument straight. He couldn't justify why he would be withholding certain records, and all in all, he just looked like he could not maintain his composure. Aside from the fact that Donald Trump will absolutely walk all over him come November, the Democrats are facing another serious challenge, embracing unequivocally the ideas behind the Me Too movement. Now, don't get me wrong. The Me Too movement did a bunch of really great things, and I say this all the time, and every time we talk about this, a lot of really bad dudes were called out because of this. But there were some ideas that were not too good, like abandoning due process. Well, the Democrats ate it all up. Joe Biden, Tom Perez, the DNC, they loved it because they used it against Republicans. But here's the thing. Republicans are not the ones calling for these standards. Republicans are less likely to be swayed by accusations made 30 years ago. So now that the Democrats have fully embraced this, it is coming back and backfiring in their faces. New polls have come out. Joe Biden is actually starting to do worse, and he's losing with independents. Now he may actually lose the progressive vote because he looks like a hypocrite. Let's take a look at exactly what's going on with Joe Biden, but other statements made by Democrats where we can see, as much as there may be some Republicans who have been hurt by accusations or allegations, the Democrats called for this. The Democrats embraced this, and now they have to contend with their own arguments, and it's not working. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's several ways you can give. The best thing you can do, share this video. There are a lot of people who are trapped in echo chambers. They may not want to watch this video, but sharing really does help. And maybe some people will listen to this argument. They don't have to agree, but at least they'll know, right? If you do like my videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also the notification bell to make sure YouTube keeps sending my videos, which they probably won't anyway at some point. So hey, it'll be fun while it lasts, right? Let's take a look at the first story. I want to show you this. Nancy Pelosi snaps when asked about Democrats' Me Too double standard, saying, "I do not need a lecture." Now, that's the gist of the story. I think we understand. We are seeing many Democrats now placed in a very, very difficult position where their past statements no longer align with their unjustifiable defense of Joe Biden. Well, let's take a look at the current results, and then we can talk a bit about what's going on with the Democratic Party and how this is really hurting them. Joe Biden almost tied with Donald Trump as lead falls within margin of error poll. First, there are a lot of polls showing Joe Biden is doing way better than Donald Trump, and it's hard to know who to trust or why. I typically don't like using individual polls, but this did just come out today amid the ongoing news cycle around Joe Biden and his allegations. I don't want to pretend like this is indicative of what's happening with Biden, but I want to use it to make one important point. The Newsweek says, former Vice President Joe Biden's lead over President Donald Trump is within the margin of error, according to new polling data. The latest survey published by The Hill and Harris X on Thursday found that 42% of registered voters said they would back Biden if an election were held today, while 40% threw their votes behind the president. What's most interesting about this? Broken down by gender, the results showed President Trump had a 5-point lead with male voters. Biden won the female vote by 8 percentage points, meaning Biden's lead with women is pretty good. One of the reasons he's probably beating Trump is because of women. Among younger voters, the 18 to 34 age bracket, the former vice president also led the incumbent by a striking 14 points. Well, it's good for Donald Trump. Those people don't vote, right? The president was also found to have a small lead among independents, with 34% preferring the incumbent, as 32% supported the former vice president. Lower income voters naturally are leaning towards Joe Biden. Here's what I find very important. Joe Biden is not going to win over independents by looking like a hypocrite. And if Donald Trump is already winning them over, Joe Biden desperately needs the progressive vote. But by coming out and acting like he's done nothing wrong and defying his past statements, especially as it pertains to the Me Too movement, he actually risks losing progressive voters, which are actually helping him stay above Donald Trump, and also women. If women view him as a hypocrite, they might not want to vote for him. Or if they view him as legitimately harming this woman, they also might not want to vote for him. Keep in mind, Trump has accusations against him as well. But the point I'm making is while the Me Too movement was used against Republicans, look, Republicans didn't call for the standard. And Republicans are not being swayed by these arguments. Democrats are. And that's why we're coming to this point. Bloomberg writes, Biden accuser leaves Democrats struggling to reconcile Me Too. We know the story about the allegations and everything of that nature. They say the issue hasn't stopped Biden from getting endorsements from the most prominent women in the party, including Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. Now, this is especially difficult for the women who in the past were saying we must believe women and we're female lawmakers and we must protect women's rights, now coming out and ignoring what's happening. Even though supporters of Biden still say they favor him over Trump, who has faced allegations as well, there has been a growing call for Biden to address the allegations head on, which he has now done, and it's not pretty. Axios reports, Joe Biden on past comments about believing women. From the very beginning, I've said believing women means taking the women's claims seriously. Women have a right to be heard, and the press should rigorously investigate claims they make. In the end, the truth is what matters. One of the big benefits Joe Biden has had is that because of the pandemic, he's been gone. They've said in the past that the less Joe Biden is in the press, the better, because he gaffes so often. But as he's done more and more interviews, he's been sputtering, stuttering, stammering, and looking really, really bad. Everyone expects Donald Trump to walk all over this man come November, and now we've seen it again. In this interview with MSNBC, you see the accusation and the support of Me Too from the Democrats has forced Biden to step up and go on a major national interview where he looked awful. He couldn't justify his own arguments against why he said we should be withholding these records. It's not even about withholding just the records on Tara Reade. Byron York of Fox News tweeted, apart from Tara Reade matter, Biden is making the case that all the records of his time in federal office from the Senate 1973 to 2009 and VP 09 to 2017 should remain sealed during the campaign. Again, completely apart from the Reade issue, a hard position to defend. He had to go on TV. The dude has no strength left. He looks terrible, and he just sputtered out. The progressives are taking notice, and this will cost Biden what little support he had left with them already. Look, the progressives are already mad that the Democrats basically cheated out Bernie Sanders or just won in general. You can look at it however you want. Either the Democrats just beat him and the progressives are mad, or they cheated. So there's very few people left in the progressive wing who are saying things like, well, we got to support Biden anyway. In fact, many are saying hashtag never Biden. We can now take a look at Jacobin magazine, the premier socialist magazine. The Democrats seem just fine with Biden's assault allegation. They say, in 2016, an alarmed Republican establishment tried to force Donald Trump out of the race over his history of assault, not because they were feminists, but because they thought it looked bad. Today, the Democratic establishment is simply dismissing the same allegations against Joe Biden. I kid you not. Socialists defending the Republican Party because at least some of them in the establishment tried to stop Trump because it looked bad. Take a look at Steve King, the example I go to all the time. When he made statements that people deemed offensive, the Republicans kicked him out, censured him, removed him from various committees. The Democrats just keep defending bad behavior. From Ilhan Omar's offensive statements, now to Joe Biden, they don't seem to care about principles, and people are taking notice. The Spectator, Amber Athey, what Biden's recent endorsers said about Kavanaugh and Me Too. And now you can see why Nancy Pelosi snapped, why she was so angry someone would ask her about it, because her position is untenable. If they were willing to say that Kavanaugh, that Trump should be completely disqualified, but now Joe Biden's getting a free pass, well, they're in trouble. Because the only thing they could say is they're hypocrites or, oh, you know what, we were wrong. Well, apparently they're saying nothing. Amber Athey of The Spectator put together a list of 35 people, believe women, Me Too, who all of a sudden now just don't care. It was the Democrats who chose to embrace a standard that eschewed due process, not the Republicans. And that's why independents, conservatives, Trump supporters are less likely to be impacted by these allegations. Prove it or don't. Now, some people have called out Republicans saying they're engaging in a double standard by pressuring Joe Biden when they didn't believe Brett Kavanaugh should have been, held to this scrutiny. That's not the case at all. While there are, I think it's fair to say 99.9% of conservatives who are demanding Joe Biden speak up to this are doing so to say, if this is the standard you asked for, we demand you hold yourself to it. I do not believe we should be playing these games with 30-year-old allegations. But it was the Democrats who chose this, who embraced Believe Women and the Me Too movement, and now they must reap what they have sown. Believe all women? Now that Reid accused Joe Biden, never mind. In an op-ed, Catherine Cherkasky says Democrats who backed Blasey Ford's story about Kavanaugh now suddenly shift because their preferred presidential candidate is threatened. Again, the Republicans just dismiss this stuff, and they get criticized for it. The progressives say when Donald Trump is accused, Republicans don't care because they're bad people. Well, you know what? They disagree with you. You can call them bad. You can argue their position, but at least it's consistent. The Democrats, on the other hand, are clearly exploiting the progressive movement to attack their enemies. And now they will reap what they have sown. Glenn Greenwald says, and Believe All Women has now officially been replaced with hashtag I Believe Biden. Another way of saying hashtag that woman is lying, because that's who Democrats are. And currently, Mika Brzezinski for MSNBC is trending nationally. Of course, we've seen it. Perez of the DNC haunted by past calls for officials who engage in misconduct to step aside amid Biden's claims. The standard that they held is gone. And now we can see even the Me Too movement being impacted by this. Before I get to that, I want to point out something very important. Some of their defenses may be that, as this woman says, you can be both accountable and electable. This is a Me Too founder, Tarana Burke, trying to defend Joe Biden while trying to seem consistent. I'm sorry. When Brett Kavanaugh was on the line, being accused, they said it is not a criminal complaint. We are putting this man, he's going through a job interview. Should we really let this man take a job for life or for a set amount of time if he has this character defect within him? They didn't say you could be held accountable and electable. They said this should reflect on your character, period. And now all of a sudden, the woman who coined the phrase Me Too, Tarana Burke, has said, well, with Biden, it's complicated. You can be accountable and electable. Tarana Burke, the activist behind the Me Too movement, did not outright denounce Joe Biden when weighing in on Tara Reade's accusations. The funny thing about this is that she defended him. She found a way to walk back what was said about Kavanaugh to defend Joe Biden. We get it. You have no standards. Now, I said earlier that there are many progressives who want this standard upheld as well. And here we can see that's just not the case. Some of these progressives actually just would prefer Biden to win anyway, because that's how much they hate Donald Trump. And this is the big shocking thing to me. You'd think that with the way the media lies and props up the establishment, progressives would be on board to go after the establishment more so than they are. Well, they actually are going up against Biden for sure, saying never Biden, and now challenging the media a whole lot more. I think what we see here, though, is that some of these progressives were actually just establishment cronies wearing a mask. They want to pretend like they're all about your cause, the left and the Me Too movement, up until their establishment, corrupt politician wants to take that throne. Joe Biden has been accused of corruption recently, and also in recent history, with several magazines saying what he and his family did was soft corruption. And of course, it's not just Tarana Burke, but also Alyssa Milano. And most of you know this by now. Alyssa Milano has been desperately trying to defend Biden, claiming that Tara Reade's allegations had no credibility, a complete reversal of her position as a leader in the Me Too movement. But wait, this is about the Democrats, not just the Me Too leaders. We can even see that the Me Too movement is backfiring on its own leaders, which is kind of hilarious. But let's take a look at the actual progressives. Let's take a look at how this is actually hurting the Democratic Party for embracing this. And we turn to none other than Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan, one of the leaders in the Me Too movement as well, lashed out at the Democrats and the media, saying, now I know too much. She said the Democratic Party and the media had become a cult. She always thought that the Democrats were the good guys. The New York Times, the Washington Post were the good guys. And it turns out they weren't. It turns out that they're the same as everybody else. But you know what? For whatever reason it is right now, the Republicans certainly have their problems, but they are not this bad. Perhaps it's because there's no leadership, I don't know. Perhaps because Donald Trump created a new, more accountable to an extent, Republican Party by bringing in new voters and populists, people who hadn't traditionally been Republicans. The Republican establishment actually tried to remove Trump with these allegations. So even the Republican establishment, according to socialist magazine Jacobin, was more accountable than the Democratic Party is. I tell you what, man. Someone must have turned the thermostat in hell up to, down to 30 degrees. Because I can't believe we're seeing once again Jacobin magazine praising conservatives. Kind of. They've had kind words to say about some conservatives in the past because they are challenging the Democratic establishment, and at least you can say the Republicans do as well. Now, many in the media tried playing this off like it was just conservatives who were challenging this. But it wasn't. We've seen numerous progressives call out Joe Biden. They are reaping what they have sown. I can say it 50 billion times, but it is here. It is not about conservatives. It is about everyone but you. The crony establishment has no one left in their corner but themselves. And while I have my disagreements with the progressive policies and some of their ideologies I think is really, really insane, when we're all standing here together saying Joe Biden should be held to the same standard that you asked for, then perhaps you've lost the fight already, Democrats. But what happens? What happens when people actually try to stand up and say, I have to talk about this? You get the story of Chris Hayes. Twitter's demand to fire Chris Hayes goes against the entire Me Too movement. I'm sure it does. And do you think any one of these people care? Right now, progressives are referring to these people as blue MAGA. I love it. It's kind of hilarious. But it's not fair. Trump supporters are in agreement with you right now. Hey, you want the standard, it's all yours. Now, I get it. What they're trying to say is that Joe Biden supporters are ignoring the claim against him, the same as Trump supporters would ignore the claim against Trump. But at least the Trump supporters are being consistent, right? They don't agree with the movement at all, and now they're only saying that Biden should answer for this because you asked for it. If you want to hold Kavanaugh to the fire, they're going to hold you to the fire. And now it gets worse. Amid these allegations, a new story has emerged from Vice. Biden just picked a guy with Me Too issues of his own for a key campaign slot. We have seen resignations. We have seen many Democrats taken out of office because of accusations. You know what, man? When you decide to enact certain policies and ideas, you always must recognize it will be used against you. Well, while the progressives seem to understand this, sort of, not the fake ones like the leaders of the Me Too movement, the Democratic establishment is kind of in panic that they all jumped on this bandwagon. You see, this is exactly what the problem is. They see Twitter as some kind of path towards getting the progressive vote or to getting liberals to vote. But these people aren't your traditional liberals. Traditional liberals, like regular old liberals that typically vote for the Democratic Party, also agree with due process. What we're seeing now are leftists, progressives, and people without principle. But here's the big problem for the Democrats. Some of the progressives are walking away from you because they think Biden is a crony. You're left now holding the bag that you never really agreed with. Well, you know what they say? They say the reason you don't lie is because it becomes harder and harder to keep track of what your lies are. So the Democratic Party is just going to keep lying about what they really believe in. Don't be surprised when it's thrown back in their face and they can't keep their story straight. Here's what Vice says. Biden's campaign announced Thursday morning that Senator Chris Dodd would serve as one of 4 co-chairs on Biden's vice presidential selection committee, along with Rep. Lisa Blunt of Rochester, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, and longtime Biden advisor Cynthia Hogan. A Biden campaign statement announcing Dodd's appointment described him as a longtime friend and colleague of Vice President Biden for almost 40 years, who has earned a reputation as a leading voice on domestic and international issues during his service in the U.S. Congress. But that's not Dodd's entire reputation. Dodd was well known as Senator Ted Kennedy's wingman during the 80s. The Almanac of American Politics described his reputation as a party boy and a partner in nightlife crime of the former senator. And that includes one rather serious allegation of assault by Kennedy in which Dodd allegedly participated. Congratulations, Democratic Party. It's everything you've ever asked for. Now listen, the Me Too movement has done good, and I still think it can do good. I don't like dragging up all these old allegations, but I do like the idea that we'll maybe hold people to a higher standard. Maybe we won't let people like Biden and this dude get away with it. Here's the problem. Trump supporters and conservatives are not going to believe it without hard evidence. And you can argue that the Democrats feel the same way. But let me just remind you for the last time. The Republicans didn't start the Me Too movement. They didn't come out and say, we want all of these accusations laid bare, as much as some Republicans did say in response to it with Trump that they wanted him removed. In the end, it's what the Democratic Party wanted. And that's why this whole movement, it's all backfiring on them. Perhaps if they maintained their principles, perhaps if instead of focusing on Orange Man Bad, they talked about policy issues and how they wanted to help the American people, they could have won. Instead, in their desperation, they embraced people they didn't quite understand. Biden okays search for any records on Reid complaint and archives, refuses to do the same for University of Delaware papers. We get it. Biden has no principles. He's desperately trying to sweep this under the rug. But you know what the craziest thing about all of this is? Trump actually kind of defended Joe Biden. Real Clear Politics, Trump to Biden. Respond to Reid. Could be false accusations. I know all about false accusations. Wow. You want to talk about consistency? Let's talk about consistency. Donald Trump saying they may be false accusations, I don't know, but brings up the possibility giving Joe Biden a potential defense. Why? Because Donald Trump has been accused too. Instead of playing silly games saying, oh no, Joe Biden did it, Trump actually comes out and says this. That was surprising. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to say it was surprising to me. You can complain all day and night about the president's behavior and the people around him and the policies he implements. But again, he didn't start the Me Too movement. He's been critical of it. And he's critical of it now. So what do we get with the Democrats? Hypocrisy? A failure to uphold any real values? They run on kitchen table issues and they immediately go to try and impeach Donald Trump? We see it from left-wing outlets trying to claim that the Republicans are actually the ones with the double standard. Conservative media appears ready to believe women against Biden. They say Tara Reid's accusation against the presumptive nominee originally circulated in left-wing media, but has now found an audience on the right, with the president's son among those giving it oxygen. Because you tried to destroy Brett Kavanaugh. But I think they understand this. I think these lefty outlets totally know this. They know that they tried to do it, but it's an easy out. Look, if they're lying about the accusations, if they're lying about the evidence, if they wrote hundreds of stories about Christine Blasey Ford and they ignore Tara Reid, we know there's no principle and no integrity. On the Democratic establishment side, on the media establishment side. So I'll tell you what, let me wrap up with one very easy to make point. People say Tim rags on the Democrats all the time. Somebody commented this, said, yes, when the media is lying and pushing the same fake talking points of the Democratic Party, of course Tim's going to call it out because he's calling out liars. And that really is it. Donald Trump actually staying consistent. What should I complain about? Should I say, oh, well, if Donald Trump wants Biden to answer for it, then he should too? He's literally bringing it up. He's literally saying he was accused too. Now maybe Trump could go and address every single person who ever accused him, whatever, I don't know. The point is, it's very obvious that the media was supporting the Democrats. How could anyone argue the media isn't biased at this point? It's not about who's got the better policy ideas. That's what it really comes down to. I have not made, well, for the most part, an argument in favor of the Republican policy manifesto. Maybe some positions here and there, and disagreeing with many of them. And that's where things get really weird. Simply by calling out the lies, they say you must secretly want the policies of the Republican Party. That makes literally no sense. I just don't like the fact that you are all liars, and you've only pretended to have these positions because it benefited you politically. That is disturbing. And now I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that you are now reaping what you have sown. Pot, meet, kettle. We'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.